Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. For today's video, I want to talk about two of my favorite horror movie directors, Wes Craven and Sam Raimi, and the connections between some of their more popular horror movies. Wes Craven was born on August 2nd, 1939, while Sam Raimi was born in October 29th, 1959, so there is a 20-year gap between these two directors. Wes Craven is credited with directing 36 movies and TV series, while Sam Raimi is credited with directing 39 movies and TV series. Both of them started their directing debut in the 1970s and just grew and grew as the years went on. Some movies Wes Craven is most famous for are Hills Have Eyes, the Nightmare on Elm Street series, and the Scream series, while Sam Raimi, his most prominent director debut is from the Evil Dead movie that he did with Bruce Campbell back in the 1980s. Now, these two directors didn't meet until pretty far into their directing careers, but that didn't stop them from communicating with each other through their movies. And all of this started back in 1977 with the Hills Have Eyes movie directed by Wes Craven. On the wall in one of the scenes of that movie is a torn Jaws poster. Now, this poster is not an exact copy of the Jaws movie poster. It really is just a great white shark with its mouth open. And it was interpreted that Wes Craven put this poster into the movie as a way of saying that his movie, The Hills Have Eyes, is scarier than Jaws. Now, whether or not this is true or Wes Craven just put the poster in the movie to fill the walls is unknown, but Sam Raimi specifically kind of interpreted that poster as that having that meaning. So 4 years later, when Sam Raimi was making the Evil Dead movie, he got a Hills Have Eyes poster, tore it to the point where it was just barely unrecognizable, and then stuck it in the fruit cellar of the Evil Dead cabin. And Raimi has said that this was his way of telling Wes Craven that this is a real horror movie, and that what he did with The Hills Have Eyes does not compare. And although The Evil Dead is not a well-known movie and definitely wasn't like a super blockbuster hit when it came out, Craven still saw the film, saw that reference, and decided to also put a reference into one of his upcoming movies. And that upcoming movie happened to be A Nightmare on Elm Street. The first Nightmare on Elm Street came out in 1984, so 3 years after Raimi released The Evil Dead. And in that movie, we see Nancy trying to stay awake so she doesn't have to encounter Freddy in her dreams, so she puts on a movie at night to help stay awake. The movie she chose? The Evil Dead. So in The Nightmare on Elm Street, we see Nancy watching The Evil Dead. And as another little jab to Raimi, Wes Craven had Nancy fall asleep with the movie still on. And this has been interpreted as a way of saying that this movie isn't so scary because look, she couldn't even stay awake. And of course, Raimi couldn't take this sitting down, so whenever The Evil Dead 2 came out in 1987, he also referenced the Freddy Krueger movies. In Evil Dead 2 in the fruit cellar and in the work shed, you can see Freddy's glove hanging on the wall. Now, this is unconfirmed, but legend has it that that is actually a movie prop from the Nightmare on Elm Street movies. And while there's nothing that really definitively says yes or no to this, a lot of people comment on how well made the glove looks and how it doesn't look like just some cheap prop, especially thinking of a prop in the 80s. Nightmare on Elm Street was really popular at the time, so there was a ton of fake Freddy Krueger costume props you could get, but this one just had a little bit more sturdiness and realism to it that led people to believe that Craven actually let Raimi borrow the glove for the production. But moving on into 1996, when Wes Craven came out with the first of his Scream movies, we see the kids deciding on what horror movie they want to watch for the night, and in that stack of VHS tapes there is of course The Evil Dead, and as another little jab at Raimi, they choose to watch instead the movie Halloween. Now, Wes Craven and Sam Raimi didn't meet until years later. They were making these jabs at each other and referencing each other in their movies without actually having met. Raimi said the first time he met Craven, he saw him approaching their some convention show thing, and Raimi decided to hide and jump out and scream in Wes Craven's face, and it scared him. And Craven was like, "Oh my god, are you mad?" And apparently they were just friends ever since then. But Raimi really respected Wes Craven as a director and looked up to his movies, which is why he wanted to reference them in his first Evil Dead. So of course it was heartbreaking for Raimi whenever Wes Craven passed away in the fall of 2015. And that was also around the time that Ash vs. Evil Dead, the TV series based on the first Evil Dead movies, was being released. Season 1 came out in 2015, and although Raimi only directed one of the episodes, they still did tie in a reference back to Wes Craven, back all the way to the second Evil Dead movie. In the Season 1 finale, whenever Ash has to go back to the cabin and he's walking around the fruit cellar in the work shed, we can still clearly see Freddy Krueger's glove hanging on the wall. And then in Season 2, whenever Ash has to travel back in time, he passes by an old retro movie theater, and one of the movie posters being displayed is The Hills Have Eyes, again referencing the first Evil Dead with that ripped Hills Have Eyes poster. And a lot of people thought that Wes Craven and Sam Raimi had legitimate beef between each other because of these references within the movies, especially with Craven having his characters falling asleep to the Evil Dead or choosing other movies over the Evil Dead. But there was never really any animosity between the two. Raimi was really just a big fan of Craven and thought it'd be funny to reference him in one of his movies, and Craven just kept playing back. And while the connections may not be mind-blowing and it doesn't necessarily tie these two worlds together, I love seeing connections like this in horror movies. I think it's super fun whenever directors sort of implement other horror movie-esque things within their movies, consequently connecting them together. I personally like to think of horror movies living in their own universe, and that's why the characters do things that are sort of crazy to us. Because, I mean, we've all watched a horror movie and thought, why the hell are the characters acting like this? No one would do this. And I believe that's because they live in a universe where that's how people act whenever they're confronted with scary things. And it's even more fun to think that all of these bad guys and horror movie icons live together in this universe and might actually have met each other at some point. We see other references in movies, like the Freddy vs. Jason movies, obviously, but in Bride of Chucky, whenever they open up one of the evidence lockers, you can see references to the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street. There are other movies as well that connect with older 80s classic horror movies, and also some newer movies as well kind of have those connections between them. And that's not even getting into the connections within Stephen King's universe of horror. He has said that he sort of thinks of all of his characters and stories living together in one universe, and you see that cross-reference throughout his books and stories. And while I know this video isn't super long because there aren't a ton of connections between Wes Craven and Sam Raimi, I still love the connections that there are. They're two of my favorite horror movie directors, and they've made some of my favorite movies and characters. So I love being able to see, like, Freddy Krueger is my favorite horror movie bad guy. I love seeing his glove in the Evil Dead work shed because the Evil Dead's my favorite movie of all time. But there are tons of other connections that I could talk about between just tons of different movies and sort of similarities that you see, not only direct references, but things that are obviously taken and inspired by other horror movies. It's something I want to talk about a little bit more on my channel, so let me know if it's something you guys are interested in, and if there's other horror movie connections you want me to talk about. You can let me know what other horror movie connections you want to see, or if you knew about these connections between Wes Craven and Sam Raimi by leaving a comment down below, or head over to my Instagram, What a Horror. I'll be making a post about this video as well. But as always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you want to see new videos, because I put out new videos every Friday. And until next time, stay spooky.